Okay, so the topic for this webinar is closing out the current year plans and starting the new year's. But in reviewing who I thought would be attending, I thought we should make it a little bit more robust and actually add in some information about how the standard plans are constructed. So, so that's what I'm planning on doing today. That's me, in case you don't know what I look like.
Hey, Lorna.
Or in case you wanted to know what I looked like. No illusions there. Okay, so this webinar is going to be for EMAS. You probably already know that. Your proficiency is going to be intermediate or advanced. If you're not at that level, don't worry about it, because obviously, you have to start somewhere. So this will be a good starting for you, Michelle. So no worries about that.
Good.
The tracking segment is the communications. That's not really important for you to know. And it's probably going to take about an hour, I think, by the time we talk about the standard plans and answer questions. So the skills and access rights that you need to have this, or to be able to work with the standard plans, is you need to have access to that piece on the menu tree. That should probably be fairly obvious. We'll talk about how, what the standard plans are about. So if you're not clear on that, hopefully you will be by the time we finished this discussion. And we'll talk about how you edit and add items to the standard plan. So you should be able to do that. If you don't have those access rights now, then you should ask your administrator for those rights. Okay, and the option on the menu tree under the communications menu tree is update student plan. So that's the option that you need to have access to. The steps as you, so this is more about, oops, and that says 2014, should say 2018. This is more about what happens when you approach the end of the year. So this slide is talking about how you, in terms of your standard plans, you're going to condense the dates, and we'll look at that towards the end of the webinar. You'll expand the communication plans, the standard plans, so that you copy them forward. And that's what we did the other day, Ashley, so you saw how that works.
Yes.
And then we're going to talk about how you retire communication plans that are no longer valid. And that's really important, and you may not know what that's about, but we'll look at that together. Related to what happens during this period of time, but not discussed in this webinar, but it's important for us to just note here that at this time of year you might want to look at your queries and update them so that they're not entry term specific for your fall 2017 entry term, but instead they might be more specific for fall 2018, since that's the new recruiting year. And then, of course, this is the time of year when you want to edit your validation tables so that if there's any new majors or changes to source codes, you take care of those. And if there's new entry terms or statistical years, that you add those into your validation table. We won't be discussing that today, but there is going to be a webinar towards the end of August that will talk about the year-end process and statistical years. So it's a free webinar, so you can sign up for that. Okay, so just a little graphic on how this time of year is kind of a special time of year, because you're ending the recruiting for 2017 and you're starting the recruiting for 2018. So this is just a little reminder that there's kind of a crossover period of time here, and so there's some special processes that happen during that crossover time. Okay, any questions about anything that I've talked about so far? Okay, then the learning objectives, we're going to look at how to create a standard plan, how to consolidate due dates on a standard plan that's active, currently active in your system, how to copy forward standard plans that are active that you want to be present for the new recruiting year, how to delete standard plans, and that's really important, and then how to run the updates so that the updates that you've applied to your standard plans is applied then to your student record, so that you make sure that the student records reflect the changes that you've made in your student plan. And then I'm going to hope to give you a little bit of a review of how to report on standard plans that you have in your system. Okay, so let's dive right into the standard plan. So what is a standard plan? It's a communication plan that is set up and to be so that the communications that are configured in the plan itself will be automatically assigned to the student, to the appropriate student. And so how does the program know what the appropriate student is? It knows because when you set up the standard plan, you tell the system that the plan is designed for students at a particular stage with a particular entry term and a specific market segment. So as I look at my plan in this slide, I see that it's been set up for the entry term of fall 2017. Do you see that in the header? The market segment is for freshmen, and then the stage is the applicant. Now your market segments may be different from what I have here because market segment is customized for each client, whatever is appropriate. It might be first-time freshmen, or you might have, young adult. That would be a typical market segment, or you might have transfer or international. So market segments are going to vary for every client. And probably entry term is going to vary to some degree, although it's probably predictable that you have a fall 2017 entry term and a fall 2018 entry term. But the stages are hard-coded in Recruitment Pro. So there's 6 stages, and this one happens to be the stage 300, which is the applicant stage. So you can see in this slide it says that a standard plan is set up based on the combination of 3 factors: stage, entry term, and market segment. The communications are added to the plan in the sequence that you would like for them to be sent. So the top listing in this green is the first item that goes out. The second listing in the plan is the second item that goes out, and so forth. And then each communication is configured so that it tells the system what type of communication it is, what the name is, the number of days. You can see that in the days column. The appropriate enclosures. Don't see any enclosures for any of these communications, but that's quite possible. And an enclosure is something like a view book or a packet of information that you're sending them. it indicates that you're enclosing it in a larger envelope or something to that degree. And then the last piece in here that is appropriate to remember is that you can apply logic to the communication. So maybe you want the communication to be sent to only, well, there's a piece of data in the student's record that indicates that they should be sent this specific piece, this specific communication. So logic in the student's record is going to tell the program that it should or it should not be sent. Okay? So now let's actually go into Recruitment Pro and take a look at that plan so that I can really look at it in more in depth. Okay, so let's go back and let me show you how I got into that screen. So from the menu tree, you choose Communications, and under that you're going to see Standard Plans. Under Standard Plans, the first option is Standard Plans View. So that's the option that you choose when you want to either review the plan that's already set up or to create a new plan or to edit it. So for that plan, I have the entry term of fall 2017. My market segment is freshman, and my stage is applicant. It's a small plan. I only have 4 pieces in it. You can have as many as you want. Sometimes I'll come into a student or a client's plan and they've got a listing that seems to go on forever. But then if you look at the logic column, you know, it's clear that students are getting some but not all based on that, whether they meet the logic or not. But the point is that you can have as many as you want or as few as you want. Maybe for a prospect, for instance, for stage 100, you have a piece that goes out just to see if they might be interested in becoming an inquiry. So you have one communication that you send to all your prospects. So just know that the number of pieces isn't really important. The more important piece is that it be appropriate for that segment of your students that you're recruiting. Okay, so let's look at each one of the items that has been placed in this plan. So my first item is an application folder label. So as soon as the student applies and in their record someone updates them to this stage, and it can be by an import or it could be manually, they're updated, then immediately the plan automatically assigns this plan to their record. Let's take a look at that so you can see how that works. So I have a fall 2017 student, freshman, and right now they're at the inquiry stage. Okay, when I open up their record, let's take a look at what they might have in their plan. There's really nothing in their plan. Let's see if they've gotten anything in contact history. Nope, nothing was sent to them either in contact history. This is my sample data, so I wouldn't know whether there was anything in there or not. But now I'm going to update them to the applicant stage. Oops, I have a required field that I need to fill out. All right, we'll give them art. Now when I save the record and open up their plan, I see that all of those items have been inserted into my student's record. Okay? So that's what makes the plan so powerful, because you don't have to consciously think about what the student's going to get. They'll automatically be assigned the items that you have set up in your plan. And you'll notice that the first item, the date on that, the first two items actually are today's date. And then after that, 7 days later, they get the missing documents item. And then another 7 days, they get the application complete. But the application complete had logic in it, so they may or they may not receive that until their application is complete. They won't receive it until their application is complete. So the first two items go out immediately. The third one goes 7 days later, and then the application complete goes another 7 days after that. Did that make sense? Okay, so when we look at the plan, notice that the days is 0 on the first two items. That's actually day 1. So the first two items go out simultaneously. Depending upon, again, we've got logic in this piece. So let's take a look and see what the logic is on this one. If I go into the query tool, actually, that's not it. I'm going to actually look at the SQL statement in here. So I know what this stands for. There's an admit type. It's looking for an admit type of IN. And that means that the application is incomplete at this point. So for students who have an incomplete application, they're going to get out of here, the acknowledgement, but there's going to be some information in there that is related to the fact that it's incomplete. And you know, I think probably, I'm not sure who set this up or why it was set up that way, but just understand that if there's something that tells the program that the student should be receiving this or not be receiving it, that going into the query tool is where you can set that up. Okay? All right, now on day 14, we have the application missing documents item. And this is kind of a special item, and I'll tell you what's happening in this. So first of all, it's got the variable of counselor in it. So that means that the document, there are a series of documents set up for the missing documents communication, and each one is coming from the counselor, the specific counselor that is assigned to that student. So we'll go back and look at one of our students, and I can show you how that looks in the student's record. But also, if I look at the bottom of the screen, I can see that this piece here, CT, I see a T in here, and that tells me that it's a tracking communication, and so it's a special kind of communication. It means that it's only going to go to students who have outstanding tracking requirements. So, and again, it comes from the counselor. So there's lots of specialized information in this particular piece. And let's go back and look at our student's record. So let's see. All right. Let's open up another student because I think they've already gotten one of those pieces. Okay, so where's our piece? What was it? Oh, now I can't remember the name of the piece that came from the counselor. Let me look back at my application missing document. Comes from the counselor. Okay, so if I take it out of contact history, it'll get reinserted into the plan, and then we can take a look at this. Notice down here where it says expanded V1 RDW, that's special to this particular communication. None of the other ones here have it. And so what that says is this is my counselor code, and my counselor is RDW, whoever that is. And so that's the version of the document that's going to be sent to that student. And again, I can see the T in here, and that tells me it's a tracking requirement. It's a tracking communication. And so let's just do a quick look at how that looks in main communications. Missing document 1. So we see counselor in here as a variable, and we also see tracking activated for this particular item. Okay. Okay, so that's how that looks. Now, I do want to make sure that we cover this adequately before I move on to the next topic. Okay, the other thing that's important to know about this piece in particular is it will only go to the student if there are tracking requirements that are unsatisfied. So just be aware that there's special programming behind the tracking communication, okay? And if you need to know about that, that's kind of a whole other topic that I'll be happy to talk to you about, okay? All right, so let's move on. The last piece is the application complete. And if I look at the logic in this one, I see that oh no, this isn't very good logic. So I would probably I don't know who set this one up, but it's looking for this should be a subquery maybe on tracking requirements, and that's a subquery that is kind of a tricky subquery, making sure that there are no outstanding tracking requirements for this student, and then you're going to send this piece. So that's a special query that I'd be happy to help you set up, because that didn't look like what I was expecting it to look like. Okay, now let's talk about if you need to add a new item to a plan that's already in process, then you would come down here, you'd select the item. I'm probably going to add an email and maybe encourage like a visit date or something like that. Let's add that one in. And then I'm going to indicate maybe that the days would be, I'll let it go out the same time as maybe my application complete goes out. And I'm going to save it. Now if I needed it to be inserted in the middle, then I'm going to use the move up. Oops. Let's undo on that one. I'll highlight it, which is what I didn't do, and then I can move it up. Okay? If I want to activate my plan to make sure that everybody who has that entry term stage and market segment, it has these items assigned, Then I'm going to run this button, and now it's going to evaluate all my students, and it's going to assign those communications. If the student already had the communication assigned, and I went in and edited it and ran it, now that I've edited it, that would insert the new portal invite into their record. Okay, and now the next thing I'm going to show you when we're in this is in this particular plan is the copy feature. Anytime you see this little double piece of paper in Recruitment Pro, that's the icon for copy. And what it means is whatever I have open, so if I have a query open and I choose a copy icon, it's going to copy and make a new record for that query. And in the standard plan, when you use the copy icon, it's going to copy this standard plan to a new standard plan. And so the first screen I'm presented with is to ask me, what standard plan do I want to copy it forward to? And so I'm going to say fall 2018 and move to the next screen. What market segment? And I'm just going to stay with the same market segment. And what stage? And I'm going to stay with the same stage. So when I run this, if I close out now, it won't create the new plan. But if I choose yes, then it's going to create the new plan. And now if I go into
So you didn't just copy that item that was highlighted, you copied the entire plan to move over to the new.
Yes,
okay.
I did. And so now if we look at it, we'll see this is my 2018 fall freshman applicant plan. And notice that it's got the new piece in there. Now, no one will have this assigned yet until you start to import or open up their records. So if you want it to be assigned to the students in your database that have that combination of stage, entry term, and market segment, then you need to run the run button. And I don't really have any students that meet that criterion, so no one got it assigned. Otherwise, they would be assigned that. Okay? Okay, now I've copied that fall entry term forward, but now I'm ready to retire it. I'm done recruiting for that fall 2017 entry term entirely. And I don't need those plans to be assigned to any students in my database. So it's important for you to remember that those items are still coming due if they weren't sent, right? So how do I remove all those items from those students' records so that they're no longer, right now they'd be combined with my new recruiting efforts, and I don't really want them. And so the only way to tell the program that it's done, you're done with this plan, is actually to come in and delete the plan. So you'll delete each one of these items. And it's important that you copied it forward before you do this process, okay? And now there's no records in here. And now when I run the update, it's going to remove all those communications that are currently due. So it's not unusual for us to, especially at this time of year, as we move into the fall, You know, that client, because you only do that really once a year, clients often forget that that's part of the process of maintaining standard plans to go in and delete and remove those items. So just try to bear that in mind, that's also a critical piece related to the standard plan. Okay.
I have a question regarding that.
Okay.
So we regardless, you know, dependent, I guess, upon what the stage is, whether it's a prospect or a lead or an applicant, you know, 1, 2, or 300. When you close out or retire these communication plans, what happens to the students' records? Like, do they still live in EMAS, but they just don't have any communication attached to it, so they just are kind of floating out there with no plan?
Yeah, so all of those fall. Let's go back in and look at my students now. They're still in the system, but all of those communications that were currently due are now no longer due because there is no plan associated with them, and I ran that update.
Because to give you an example, like for our adult student population, even though they may not have started in fall, we may still want to continue to recruit them for, you know, the next spring session. And so we would need to take the, where they would be a market segment of let's say like young adult or adult, and we would need to copy them over then to a 2018 entry term. So to do that for the lead side, not necessarily just the communication, like you've kind of gone over how we would need to do that for the communication plan, but is it a similar process to move over the lead, the body of leads, to a new entry term, or is that like a totally different discussion?
Well, it's kind of a different update. That sounds like an update that we call a mass data replacement, where you export your records, you update the entry term, and maybe the stage too, possibly, and then you import those records back in with import dominance on the critical piece of data, which would be entry term and maybe stage, and then the import process will look for a plan that matches against that combination of stage, entry term, and market segment. And if it finds one, then it assigns the new plan. So do you have any literature on how to do that? Because that's a common practice for us, because we have rolling admissions that are starting every 10 weeks. So we definitely, you know, flip-flop. We usually only do one entry term, you know, based on fall, and then we set everything up just once a year. But at this time of year, you know, we usually flip that in September. Okay, so yes, we do have, if you go out on EMASU, you'll find some documentation on mass data replacement. But you know, the first time you do it, it will be easier if you ask for some help and a walkthrough with it. So feel free to ask for help with creating that mass data replacement. And we can even record this session so you can have something to refer to.
Okay.
Michelle, right?
Yes, Michelle.
Yeah. Yeah, let us help you with that, because it'll look a little intimidating the first time, but it's not that bad.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's a different process. But notice that when I change the entry term to my student, for my student to fall 2018, then it put the new plan in. But you know what? If I demoted them to an inquiry, all the items go away because there is no plan set up for that.
Lorna, I'm going to put the link to the reference that you just made on EMASU in the chat box for everybody to download, so that when they're ready to call you, they'll have that background information.
Oh, okay, super. Thank you, Sarah.
Yep.
Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint. There's still a few things that I need to tell you about. So let's go back in here. Okay, so we just went over that, and now we're moving to this. If you have standard plans already set up in your system and you're scrambling to get those communications to your students before the fall entry term starts, maybe you're still even accepting students at this point. What we want you to do is to evaluate whether those dates need to be reevaluated and reassigned. So maybe you're going to condense the plan so that the dates are more appropriate for this small period of time that you have to communicate with the students. So just be aware that, you know, this is a time of year when it's likely that you might need to do that. And if you do, then you can change the date and save in the plan. And then once again, you're going to run the big blue arrow. That's the run button that assigns the plans to the student. And that will, if they're already assigned, it'll reevaluate the due dates and reconfigure those so they're more appropriate for this time of year. Okay? And then we went over the copy to. So once again, just remember that that little double piece of paper is the copy to icon. Anytime you see that in the program, that means that you've selected what you want to copy from. And then if you choose the copy to icon, it's going to copy to whatever piece. It could be a new document, a new query, or a new standard plan. Okay. Okay, we've gone over this. Okay, this is really just reiterating what we did in the plan and if there's logic in it. There is so what I showed you in Recruitment Pro with the blue run button is the individual update standard plan for each plan that you have open. When you run the blue arrow button, that's for the plan that's open. But just so you're aware, there is another option on the menu tree. And it is Update Student Plan. This will evaluate all your student plan, your standard plan, and all your student records so that all the students in your database will be evaluated for a standard plan. This could run, you know, it could take hours to run. So I like to encourage you to run the individual plan from the standard plan as opposed to this one, unless, for instance, you've updated all your plans and you're going home for the evening and you'd like to just run the larger process. So this is the larger process that will evaluate all standard plans against all student records. Okay? Just so you understand what the difference is between those two.
Lorna, I'm not really understanding that. Why? What's the difference? Like, I guess maybe my question might help clear it up. Like, once you put the communication plan together, when you hit the run button, is it like automatically saved and then you know that the plan is beginning for all student records? Or are you saying that when you go to update student plans, that's when you're actually like executing it to say, okay, here you go. Now you have, it takes so long because it's attaching that communication plan to all the records.
So when you open up an individual standard plan and run the update, it's just evaluating against the students that have that or might have that standard plan assigned. It's a limited segment of your student database and a limited segment of your standard plan. It's just the one standard plan. So because this is test data, I can show you what happens when I run this. So now it's looking at all its standard plans, and so it's looking for all students and all standard plans. Do you see the difference? Is this helpful? Or
so again, so it's basically like you're just setting up the plan is what we did, and then once you update student plans, it's attaching that plan to all of the records.
Yeah, just that one plan.
Right.
Whereas this process is looking for all plans. So if I have 20 plans set up, it's going to update all 20 plans. Okay.
So that's something that you would, I got it. So that's something that you would do once all your standard plans for all your different market segments are set up. Then you would go ahead and update student plans, and that would be when essentially it was looking at all the communication plans, all the standard plans, and setting and executing all of them to go ahead and start.
Yeah, it gives you the option to say, I'm just going to do one big process instead of one small process after each plan that I set up. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah. So it's the big process, and then the other one is the little process just for that one plan. But you can see how long this is going to take, even though I probably only have, you know, just a few plans set up. And I can cancel it too. So if you ever, you know, decide that you ran it and you didn't want to, just use the escape key to close out.
So essentially you'd probably only do that very limited, like once a year when you were setting up your communication plan, or if there was some big change, but you just do the smaller one if you were just tweaking, you know, one communication plan for, you know, one particular segment.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I'm with you.
Okay? All right. Okay, let's go back here, and we're running out of time. Deactivate, I showed you how to do that. You're going to delete all the records in your plan, and then you're going to run the blue button, which is your update. And go back. Okay. Update student plans, I just gave you a look at that. And is that clear to both of you now? Okay. So if you need to make extensive plan changes to a large number of standard plans, that's a good way of looking at it. Then you might want to choose to run the update student plans in record, in EMAS, right? Okay. Okay, if and when you remove the plans, then you might want to go into Generate Now and just verify that you can see that the plans, the items that are now due in Generate Now are not reflecting the plan that is now deleted. And then the other thing that I really wanted you to know about is that you can print your standard plan. So you can make a report directly from the standard plan by choosing the print option. And you'll notice in the print option, you can see the logic that's associated with my communication. So that's a good way for you to keep track of what kind of logic has been applied. And then the other option for running the reports is on the menu tree. And you'll see that there are a number of options for printing your standard plans or previewing them. You don't necessarily have to make a printed report. You can report to just your screen and look at the reports that are available. And you know what? I'd like to show you that on the. So let's say I wanted to see what entry term or what standard plans I have set up for fall 2017. Maybe I still have some that I'm unaware of that are active. And I wasn't aware maybe that I still had this plan active in my system. And I have 3 pages worth of plans. So this will give me a heads up about which ones I need to delete and deactivate. And the report is a little cryptic to understand. If you need help, let us know. But it's codes, so the entry term code, the market segment code, FFT, and then the stage is 400. And then if I look down here, I can see that my market segment again is first time freshman, and this is for stage 500. Okay? And again, I get to see the logic if I have any logic in there. Okay. And I think that brings us close to the end here. Yep. We learned how to create standard plans, condense them, copy forward the standard plans, how to deactivate, update student plans, and print or preview standard plans. So that was a lot to take in. I appreciate that you guys hung in there with me, and I hope that that was helpful.